Hollie. Okay. Tēnā tātou I te whānau whānui e mātakitaki mai ana. Nau mai, hara mai ki tēnei wāhi whakawhitiwhiti kōrero. Kia mōhio mai koutou, ko wai tēnei kei mui o koutou nā aroaro. He uriau no Taranaki, ko Jackie Forbes taku ingoa. Ko au te kaihau tū matua o Parakuri. Kia ora koutou mō tā koutou whakapiripiri mai ki tēnei o ngā hui. Ko te tūmanako e ora pai ana koutou I o koutou nā kāinga I tēnei wā o te noho I te kāinga. Hoi anō kia tūwhera I tā tātou hui I te karakia. He honore, he kororia ki te atua, he maunga rongo ki te whenua, he whakaro pai ki ngā tangata katoa. Āmene. Tēnā. Ka hoatu te rākau ki ngā mema o te poari nei. Ara ki a koe e holi I te tuatahi. Mau e ki mai, no whia koe, ko wai koe.
Tēnā koe te ki ngā mihi nui mō tō whakalatia te ara o mō tēnei taui. Ko wai au I te taha o tōku mama, he uri o ngā tirākai pāka no Nuhaka. I te taha o tōku pāpā, he Pākehā au, e tipu ake ki Pōneke, engari nai nei e noho ana te whāngarei, me he Kaiārahi mō Tai Tokiro. Hi, yeah, really happy to be here. Tēnā koutou katoa. Or shall I pass it on to Pine? I think we've lost our other mate for a second. But I'll give it over to you, Pine.
Pine, you're on mute.
Ki te tau tōku pāpā, ko hikurangi te maunga, ko waiapū te awa, ko Ngāti Parae te iwi. Ko te awera, ko te whānaua taki moana, ko te whānaua rākai hoia, ngā hapū, ko Pine Campbell Pakeke taku pāpā, ki te tawa tōku māma, ko rua rākai pūtara te maunga, ko te wairoa, ho pūpū, ho ningi mā tangi rau te awa, ko Ngāti Kaunini ki te wairoa te iwi, ko ngā puata te hapū, ko Tiranui taku māma, ko Pine Campbell, Paku, Junior, e mihi atu nei kia koutou I tēnei ata. Kei a koe te rākau e hoa e Paul.
Paul.
I got it. Kia ora koutou rā, kamihi atu rā ki a koutou ki Facebook Live. Tēnā koe a Pine, tēnā koe Jackie also for the opening words of the karakia. He uri tēnei o kāngata no Ontario hoki. Karakau he maunga I reira I Ontario, he oi anō e rima ngā roto moto hake ko ngā Great Lakes te ingoa. Ko Hurono tōku roto. I'm from the Great Lakes region of Ontario, Canada. Ko Ojibwe te iwi take. Ojibwe are the local band, the local iwi of that place. Ko Ngāti Pākehā tōku waka ki kānata, ko Airihi me kotarangi ngā hapū. I'm of Scottish and Irish descent. Ngāti Pākehā, kei te awa mutu e ho, aho noho ana, ko Pirongia, Kake Puku me Maunga Tautari, ngā maunga. From when I bike around town, I can see Pirongia maunga to one side and Kake Puku down the other, and Maunga Tautari is not far off the other direction, ko Manga Piko Te Awa. In fact, Te Awa Mutu is named for the point at which the Manga Piko stream stops being navigable, so the river's end, Te Awa Mutu, aho noho ana. For extreme zero waste, me parakore, aku mahi, ko kaiako hoki, te kaupapa parakore, mō ngā kura, ki te hapuri hoki, ki Waikato. I work with Waikato schools and community organizations in the Waikato. Nō reira, tēnei te koutou katoa, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. I'm sorry, I just came in. I had a bit of a glitch. Has everybody done introductions? Do I need to whiudorako to anybody else? Kia koe, Holly. Have you? Okay, ka pai. Back to you, Jackie.
Kia ora, Paul. Tēnā koutou mō koutou mihi mihi. So knowing how committed each of you are to the taiao, can each of you please share what experiences growing up shaped your relationship with the taiao? And picking on you again, Holly, would you like to kick us off?
Ka pai. Yeah, I was thinking about this question, and I did spend a lot of time outside growing up, but I think it's actually been more recently for me that my recent in recent years, I've been able to spend more energy and time exploring my Māoritanga on my mum's side, and it's been learning te reo, learning about the stories of my tūpuna and doing those kinds of things that it's become more important to me to try and live more connected to and more in balance with our atua, I think. So it's been quite recent for me, my relationship building, I guess, with the taiao, but did spend a lot of time outside when I was little. I was really lucky for that, and I'm lucky that my granddad and my dad were both awesome gardeners, so always ate lots of fresh veggies, but I was a little bit rebellious and didn't really want to spend time out there helping them, so regret it now, but still trying to learn, which is cool. Yeah, that's me. I'll hand it to you this time, Paul.
Kia ora, tēnā koe, Holly. Yes, well, I grew up, as I mentioned, in the very interesting part of Canada, nestled in between three of the Great Lakes, Lake Huron, Lake Erie, Lake Ontario, and that afforded us one of a very unusual ecology known as the transition zone between Carolinian forest and Great Lakes St. Lawrence forest. And so we have species and forest growing there that grew nowhere else in Canada, in this most southern part, in this interlake region. So I just found out that where I grew up in my little village of 500 people was the first conservation authority in Ontario, our little conservation area. And so we had this protected forest, and my awa, the Asable River, which I didn't mention before, which comes out to Lake Huron, it was the first conservation area protecting many unusual species. And as a boy, I used to do my chores at home, do my gardening, get my jobs done, hop on my little bike, pedal down to the conservation area, pay my 50 cents and spend my days in the forest by my river, listening, learning, watching, playing. And that definitely formed a lot of my enthusiasm and love for natural world, for biodiversity, for nature, for the ngāhere, for all the creatures of Tāne and everyone therein. And the other side to that would be, I was going to show you my other location before I had to quickly move computers, but I had on my bed a quilt made by my great grandmother, who passed before I was born, stitched together, hand stitched from all the old fabrics of all the old clothes of the family on the farm, basically. And that taught me that thrift, that everything is a resource and that nothing is to waste. And as my grandmother once said it, if you didn't grow it, if you didn't make it, if you didn't fix it, if you didn't bake it, you didn't have it, if you didn't buy it, you didn't go to a shop. So that kind of thrift and economy and view of everything being a resource has certainly framed my approach to kaitiakitanga, to sustainability, and to all of that. Okay, ka whiutarako kia koe a Pine.
Kia ora te whānau. I was thinking about that. I kind of this question because I grew up, we left our papakainga when I was 7 years old to Wairua, and my dad, being a teacher, took us to a few different locations. And I kind of thought at the time, all those sort of the environment that we found ourselves in, we kind of took didn't take a lot of notice of it, because as a child you just kind of get amongst it, and you enjoy it and you bathe in it, and it's only when you look in hindsight and you come back to it maybe 30, 40 years later and you realise, holy, those places that we used to swim in, we used to get kai out of, you can't do that anymore. Or actually, no, that kai's not there anymore. And and those were the sort of things that I grew up experiencing. What I say is sort of culture shocks, and moving from Papakainga to country living to city living, and then coming back. But the thing, I guess, that really for myself, that really made me make a stand and really take notice of my taiao, my environment, when I was living, moved to Raglan, to Whaingaroa. My parents had brought a batch, a holiday batch, and we were lucky enough to get to rent it. And it had a lot of native species on there, and even exotic species planted by the person who owned the house before my parents. And one day I just decided, gee, I need to learn about the names of all these natives that are on this little section. And so I went to see Papa Tex Rickard Bunt, Uncle Bunt to the coasties, and I asked him if he would come over and teach me the names of all these natives. And he said, well, he showed up and he said, have you got blocks? I said, yeah, I've got some little blocks. He said, okay, have you got a pencil? And I said, I've got a pencil. And so I followed him around as he named all the natives on the section of land, and I'd write it in pencil, write the name of the species, and then I put it beside the tree. And then for the next month or so, every day I would go down and go through all these names all the trees, visit all the trees, look at the names. And that's how I learned the names of my trees and started to form what I say is a relationship with my taiao. And my main favourite tree of that, at that section, was a horoweka. And the horoweka had a kind of a girth on it like that, and had the lovely kind of, and I'd love to just run my hand and just hold it in there. And so those were the things, I guess, it was the start of my making a stand for our environment. And kia ora tātou. Back to you, Jackie.
Tēnā koutou mo ina whakamāramatanga. And one thing I really related to when you spoke, Pene, was especially for, I guess, older people, not that we're old, but, you know, been around a little while. When we were growing up, for example, the rivers were so deep, we used to get education on, you know, don't dive, or check the river first before you dive into, you know, there could be a stick sticking up or something like that. And, you know, all the trips to the taha moana to collect kai moana. And these days you go to that same river and the water's like that deep. And yeah, so kia ora mō tēnā. Hoi anō, Penny, I know you have some slides, and I was wondering if you could please share those now with us and talk to us about what being a kaichaki looks like for you in your everyday life.
Ka pai, kia ora tātou. So this is where I live now. Yeah, I'm about to knock on the door of 60 next year, and I've found home. It's taken me 60 years to find home, and this is it. And this is where I park my heart at the moment. It's called Kaingarua. We brought this paddock about 6 years ago. It was just a paddock, and we've planted everything on it. And we live pretty much in the garage on in the main house we rent as a B&B house just to pay the bills. So the next whole lot of slides will talk about how we deal with our waste at this place on our home at here, Kaingaroa. Underneath in our kota, in our kitchen, we have a whole bunch of boxes with bits and pieces that we kind of save. Plastic bags, you know, I can't get away from plastic. I've tried, but there's still things I can't get away from. So we save up most of these bags and reuse them for very much things like freezing our fruit on our trees, like our feijoas and our figs. So we save all those bags and end up reusing them. So that's generally saving all our cardboard, normal recycling bin, and a bin for rubbish. So that's just under our kota inside our kitchen. Another box of bits and pieces, the good old Sistema containers for leftovers and things. It's always good to keep your big containers, especially if they've got a lid. So it's funny, I was thinking the other day that I don't remember using Glad wrap. I haven't really kind of thought it's just gone right out of my thinking over the years, and same with tin foil. So we sort of use these sort of things and reuse them. Again, with all our glass bottles, they go up there, and we save them for doing preserving kai. And this is outside. This is what we take, put all our recyclables and bits and pieces that are not recyclable, and those go. That's what leaves Kaingaroa. And so this. And also what I've been doing a lot of is I'm a half an almost builder. So I'm half almost builder. And one thing I learned about building is I save it and I can reuse it, and I can until it becomes this size, and then I get rid of it. And then it has to go to landfill. You can't really burn this stuff. This is all treated timbers. Whenever I can, I'll try to use natural timbers, but this stuff, there's not a lot you can do with it. So when it gets down to that sort of size, then it's off to the landfill. In our transfer station, this is an overhead of Tokomaru Bay, and down here to the left is our transfer station, which is, I guess, where my mouse is at the moment, and right beside our river is right beside our transfer station is our river called Mangahouni. Mangahouni is the awa, and it flows right around the transfer station and the green waste area. This transfer station over the last years has been flooded twice. The river has gone right through that transfer station, cut right across there, and ended up all our recyclables and all our green waste and some cars and bits and pieces that ended up on our beach, strewn right along this beach here. And that's an issue that our community is going to be faced with when we're looking to move the transfer station to higher ground or to somewhere a lot safer. So that's an issue that we have. And that's our transfer station. For my food waste, just a little something before we get into the food waste. On top of these bins here is pine pollen for all you whānau that live near pine forests. This is pine pollen. We're just coming out of it now, so we don't get a dusting like this when you wake up in the morning. We don't have that dusting anymore, but it lasts about 5 to 6 weeks. In this black container is my food going to pigs. And in this red container is my kai going for worms. In the black container, we pretty much munch out most of our leftovers. We redo them, re-curry them or re-something them. And the last things that go in there are pretty much, we've had enough. So for my worms, for probably the last 10 years and the 6 years I've been here in Tokomaru Bay, I pull out my trusty Breville Whiz and I whiz up my my food for my worms, whiz it all up. Because as you know, worms, you know, they got little mouths and they have to wait for their food to rot down so they can get their little mouths around the food. And so I help them by whizzing it up for them and making it a nice looking something like this. So when I feed them, they get it looks like that. So my worm farm looks pretty tidy. And at the moment, yeah, they're all pretty good. So that's a worm farm, Hungry Bin Worm Farm, Parakuri Bin, produced here in Onehunga. The best worm farm, I reckon, anywhere. And we also, we have 2 horses on our property, and this is, we collect their horse poos and use the local sawdust, and it's for the carbon. And that's probably last month's horse poos. And this is probably 3 or 4 months ago horse poos once the worms have got through them. This is just a normal compost, just thrown all in a big pile. This is the containers of kinna juice, fish frame juice, any juice, and also throw in my twitch and any of those pesty grasses. Just throw the roots in there and let them rot. And so here we have, we went round down the coast to the transfer stations and we collected 90 four-wheel drive tyres because we had a big mound of dirt when we finished our build, and we rammed all these tyres to build a wall and to build a garden for flowers, herbs, and kai on top. So we kind of dig out the centres, and then we make a mix of horse poos, vermicast, worm poo, and then rebuild our little tyre gardens, and then we plant into them. These are looking a bit tired at the moment. They're ready to be revitalised and reinvigorated and re-engaged. And this is my garden. It's normally my kumara garden. Underneath those carpets are my rotting down lupins and horse poos and seaweed in there. And so I'm just getting that ready for planting. And these are my babies. I've watched these babies for the last 3 weeks, waiting for them to show themselves, and they've just arrived. So I'm about ready to start another tray of seedlings and start a rotation. So so that's us here at Kaingarua, what we sort of do with our waste, and it's all about kai. Kia ora te whānau.
Tēnā koe e pene mo i nā kōrero au. He rawe te whakarongo atu ki o tikanga i te kāinga me tō noho āhua tuawhenua. Hollie, turning to you and more of a living in town situation, can you please tell us what you're doing with your waste during lockdown?
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so I live in a little rental in town, and so I wrote down what my waste streams were so I wouldn't forget anything, but I have 4 main waste streams at the moment in lockdown, and the first one is food waste. And so I'm lucky that I have access to pigs that my partner's dad farms, so I collect all my food scraps just in whatever plastic container I can find and keep it in the fridge or the freezer until I can get the pig scraps to him, and he's able to feed his pigs still during lockdown. Obviously, it's an essential service to keep those piggies alive. So that's cool. So haven't had to change really. Yeah, that process. The other waste stream I have is compostables, and usually I actually use a community compost for those. So that's my dirty paper, certain tea bags that have no plastic in them, other little bits and pieces. And at the moment I can't actually access that compost because we're in lockdown, and so I'm just collecting them in another little container and just trying to keep it not too gross, trying to keep it dry in there, and keeping the veggie scraps that I do save for the compost separate as well. The other thing is soft plastic. So like those plastic bags Penny was talking about, I got some soft plastic too, and I usually take that down to Countdown because they do soft plastic recycling here in Whangarei. Unfortunately, they've suspended that collection until level 2, and it's just to help the supermarkets focus on what they need to be doing at the moment. So another collection of things. So I just have this one area in my kitchen where it's just kind of like a collection point. It's also where I keep all my recycling. We're lucky here in the north that our recycling is still being collected and recycled, but just I made a point of calling our waste provider, which is Northern Waste, about that, because I had heard stories that in other places around the country the recycling is going to landfill at the moment because recycling centres aren't open. And so if that was the case, I would be storing my recycling as well, but luckily I don't have to do that. I've kind of been in lockdown has kind of made me realise 2 things, which is that I probably need a small sort of composting system on site for times like these where I can't access the community ones. So thinking about organising a bokashi bin once I can get my hands on some materials. And the other one is that because I haven't been able to go to, usually I would go to the farmers market or somewhere like that to get like fresh fruit and veggie that isn't in packaging, but I'm trying to limit my travel, and so just trying to do all my shopping at the supermarket, which has meant I've actually had to change my diet a little, and because I don't really want to buy lots of packeted stuff. And so another thing I'm thinking is I might need to set up some bucket gardens or something once we come out of lockdown too, just so I can have a little source of pie for times like this as well. But yeah, I know that Paul has a bokashi, and I'd love to hear more about that.
Kia ora, Hollie. Sure thing, I can carry on from there. I'm going to share my screen as well as I have some katia to show you of my home. Oops, let's get to the beginning here, of my home system. Now, I often talk about a bit like you, Hollie, in a rental situation, or I'm living in a context where I'm not completely in control of design or purchasing decisions or infrastructure around the place. And so I kind of have my mobile kit of the things I take with me. That I've recently moved house in July, and some people move furniture and possessions. I move worms and gardens. I take my whole kit with me. So here's the starting point, I guess, of minimizing waste at my place. You know, basic 101, step 101, put things in the right bin in the first place. Landfill isn't the first option, it's the last option. I call landfill the lazy bin. It's the last stop lazy bin. Maybe when you don't think of any of the other options possible, I try to always go through the list of reduce, reuse, recycle, compost. Those are my main 4 strategies that I use before I get anywhere near landfill. But here's your first stop, stick it in the right bin. Here's my grubby compost kitchen collector. So anything compostable I collect. Looks like I was just working with that one. It's a bit smudgy, but anything that can be fed back to Papa Tuanuku, that can be made into new soil, I collect in a bin right there. and it goes out to my 3-bin system outside. So the little one in the front is for meat and bones and dairy. The other 2, I've got them labeled on top. You can see what they're for. The one on the left is for my pamu noke, my worm farms. That's your fruit and veggies and everything you can see listed there. On the other side are the trickier ones that the worm farms do not want to have, like citrus and the onion garlic bread, grains, oily food, and so on. So that's my collection system, my 3 bins, and that smaller one for meat and dairy. I used to live in Kirikiriroa, Hamilton, where we had that food waste collection, and Whangaroa, Raglan has that as well, which is wonderful if someone can take away your compostables and make compost for you. But now I'm living in a place where that doesn't happen. So I'm determined to not let my food waste or my compostable waste end up in landfill, because so much of our landfill is compostable waste. And it's why statistics in Aotearoa, New Zealand, have us sitting at one of the most wasteful countries, because we put so much compostable into landfill, which is what creates methane gas and leachate and all the nasties that add into the kōrero about climate change. So from there, they go into my, once again, as Pine said, the hungry bins, and I toko that. I totally love the hungry bins. I think they're great. I use them and I set them up in kindies and schools and all sorts of places, and I love how they work. And you can see the amazing resource coming out the bottom, that liquid gold, that black gold, the tea juice that I then use on my gardens. For the things that don't fit into my worm farms, I then have this hot composting system. And this can take garden waste and green waste, obviously. Some of the kai I'll put in there as well, like my citrus peels and onions and things that rodents and cats and other local visitors may not be too interested in eating either. I wouldn't put meat and smelly things in there, because you'll smell it and it will attract vermin and so on. But I layer that with my carbon and my nitrogen, and I throw in some poos if I can find them, and get the browns and greens and just make it like a lasagna. It's wonderful. That black box that I bought at Mitre 10 for about $70, I keep filling, it keeps going up. I fill it up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down, I fill it up, it goes down. I can't believe how much it can process. And as long as the lid's open, because last night it rained, so I was letting the water get in through it, and then this morning I put the lid back on so the heat can bake it all up, so it gets the water and the heat and all the conditions that compost likes, so it just keeps going down. Then for the meat and bones and dairy and things that I don't want to have in my open composting system or in my worm farm, I have this bokashi system, which is an anaerobic system, and you mash it all down and you sprinkle the bokashi kind of like I say it kind of looks like bran flakes. It's a bit like an active culture that ferments and pickles the waste, which once that's complete, you dig it into your garden, and it acts as another form of fertilizer, building the soil, building the microbial life in your soil, getting everything activated and going so your plants can uptake nutrients and all the rest. So those are my 3 systems for my food waste. Now those are still kind of hanging out at the bottom end of that the waste hierarchy. So recycling, which I started with, and composting is still good, and I'm still giving it back and putting it back in the story, but it's still kind of requiring a single use kind of use it and get rid of it kind of practice. So I like going up the waste hierarchy and hanging out up at the reducing and the reusing actions. So, and they, kupu, te reo Māori, hoki, those are the actions, once again. Good words to learn and know about. So I set myself a couple of challenges during lockdown and to reduce. And the first one was, I like eating my fresh salad, and I was buying plastic bags full of green things, and I hated it. So I've set myself this goal to try to grow as much as I can of my own instead. So there's what I'm getting away from, the plastic bag of green food, and it's placed within my new garden. I was lucky enough to move into a place that had some raised beds ready and waiting for me. So about day 1 of moving in, I was planting a garden. That was the first one. But the second part of it was I found this growing frame tucked behind the garage, which I thought, ooh, now that's going to take me next level, because that's what it looks like when you open it up. Because I was a bit of a lazy gardener, and I was buying pots of plants, and I felt like a real good gardener because I was sticking pots in the ground. But then I had all those plastic pots left behind, which, what do you do with those? So I found the frame, and I've gone next step, and I'm learning all about raising my own seeds, and then I want to get into maramataka, and you know, there's so much to learn, and it's so exciting. So those are my babies that have popped up since I got here. And they're moving into this wonderful mara kai, where I'm now trying to grow my salads and my food as much as I can to get away from the plastic bag scenario. No judgment on that, because I still have plastic bags of greens in my fridge, but I'm just trying to, you know, go that next step. Then we have the rubbish bag in the garage, and I'm living in a situation where I'm living with others, and I'm sharing a property, and there's decisions about food and what comes into the house that are beyond my control, and not everyone's as into the waste minimization as I am. So one of the things I've been doing is conducting my own little waste checks. And so before the rubbish bag goes out each week, I run out with my gloves on and I say, wait, I'm just going to go through that. And I did it this morning. Here's my little mini waste check. The red bin is what is actually rubbish that needed to be in that bag. And so I separated it out into compostable, top left, recyclable, top right, soft plastics, once again, lower right. Now I'm in a place where I can take soft plastics. Not everybody can do that, but I can. So if they're clean, I package them up and I set them aside and I take them back, and at least they get made into something once, and instead of being in landfill. So it's not the ultimate. The best would be, of course, looking at the soft plastics and the landfill. That's where, once again, you talk about reduce and consider what you're buying and how you're buying it and how you're getting your food and all that korero that comes from there. There it is. If you're wondering about soft plastics, there's a website. You can find out if you're in an area where that can happen where you are. Now, here's a statistic. Look at that. 1/3 of all car trips in New Zealand are under 2 kilometers in distance. And so another big action for me in reducing in general is, ta-da! This is my transportation when I get home, because I drive everywhere around the motu to tell people how to reduce their use and consumption, and I drive to tell them. So when I get home, I make sure I use my bike as much as I can, and I cycle and I buy local, and a little bit of investment in a couple of carry bags like that. You can do your grocery shopping, you can go to the market, you can fit all manner of things in those bike racks and those bags and those panniers. So that's my other big effort towards waste reduction in general, emissions, fossil fuel, cars, tires, petrol, the whole lot. And in general, that's my little house. I try to live simple, I try to live light, I try to live as efficiently, just like the old quilt that my great-grandmother made, turn everything into a resource and keep it simple. And I'm sharing property, sharing resource, sharing cost, minimizing my consumption in whatever ways I can. Oh, that was just a little document about online, what you can find out about what to do during this tricky time. So you can check that out. And that's it for me. So back to you, kia koe, Jackie.
Kia ora po, tēnā koe mō te whānuitanga o whakamāramatanga ki te iwi. Nō reira i te iwi, this afternoon we've had on our panel, we've had Hollie streaming in from Whangarei, Penny from Tukumaru Bay, and Paul from Te Awa Mutu. And they've shared with you all how they design Waste Out, a 101 on reducing waste. Let's remember that when we reduce waste, we are reducing emissions, we are taking climate action. Waste and carbon emissions go hand in hand. Reduce waste and you're reducing carbon. So let's smash with a sledgehammer the system of take, make, throw away, and let's be part of systemic change towards creating a circular world of reuse. Hei whakakapi I tā tātou kōrero, could all of you please share your top tip for whānau who are wanting to jump on the parakuri waka? And maybe if we start again with you, Hollie.
Bye. Yes, I was thinking about top tip. I have one very practical one, which is to I use this app called Share Waste. That's how I knew about this community compost, and there's lots of other ones around Whangarei on there. So check it out if you're into sharing your compost to allow others to feed in, or if you're looking for a compost to feed your composters into. But the more kind of bigger advice I have is for people to be confident and sure about their why. So when you know why you're doing these things, so for example, doing it for the betterment of our atua, when you're confident about that why, doesn't matter about all the barriers you kind of face and all the times you find yourself like elbow deep in rubbish. It's the thing that kind of gives you the motivation to keep going, I think, and to find a sense of hopefulness in the mahi. Yeah, kia ora. Kia te rākau, Paul.
Kia ora, Hollie. Yeah, that's great. And I would sort of add to that and say, start with what you've got, with what you can find, with where you're at. Don't try to be perfect. Don't try to do everything. Most of the systems I've created, I'm using things I found around the property. You can make worm bins, repurposing things. You can make bokashi out of buckets. You can start simple, nail one thing, get used to doing that, get kind of hooked, move on to the next level. There's always something more to learn. There's always something to get better at. But the main thing is that you just start in there and find what's the easiest place for you to start, the easiest first thing to fix. Kia koe pene.
Yeah, I guess my top tip is returning to one of these things. Some of you may not know what this is. It's called a teapot, and it takes tea leaves or tea leaves. And if you from this is the old school and this is the new school. This is coffee plunger. Coffee plunger can also be teapot. So you can teapot it, and so what I'm saying, teapot means doesn't mean tea bags. It means tea leaves. Tea leaves. Tea leaves are coming from local Māori-owned company called Chānui. Tea leaves not coming from here, but run by a Māori company called Chānui, and means no. These go direct to your worm farm minus plastic and tea bag, and minus the glues and that glue up the tea bag. So tea leaves, teapot, and even if you want to go just tip plus, no milk, black tea. Kia ora tātou.
Tēnā koutou, he rawe a koutou kōrero. Nō reira e te iwi, tēnā koutou mō tā koutou whakapiripiri mai ki te hui nei. Well, not the hui, but tēnei hui. Ko te tūmanako i ruru a koe etahi maramara kōrero, hei āwhina i a koe, i roto i o koutou nā kāinga, ki te chaki a papatuanuku. Tēnā hono mai anō ki te whārangi parakore, he nui ngā kaupapa ka tū mai I roto I ngā wiki e tū mai nei. Join us the same time, same place next week e te whānau for a kōrero on food sovereignty with new panelists. Please make sure you follow us on Instagram at parakore_Aotearoa and subscribe to our YouTube channel and sign up to our new newsletter via our Parakore Facebook page for updates on what we're doing across the motu. Noho ora mai koutou I o koutou nā kāinga, hei kona.
Phew.
Are we off live?
I think so. It doesn't say it on my computer anymore.